There comes a point in every soul's journey when the chains, once thought unbreakable, finally fall away. It is not always with a loud battle cry or a sudden blaze of glory. Often it is quiet, almost imperceptible at first, a shift deep within the marrow of your being, where the grip of the narcissist no longer reaches. You do not win by matching their cruelty with your own, nor by outmaneuvering their lies. You win by stepping out of their darkness altogether, carrying with you only what was always truly yours. Your dignity, your soul, your freedom. And when you do, something remarkable happens. They fear you, not because you have harmed them, but because you have become something they can no longer control. Today, let us walk together through the 5 signs that you have truly defeated the narcissist, and why. Deep within themselves, they now tremble at the memory of your escape. 1. You are no longer governed by their approval. There was once a season in your life when their approval felt like oxygen, vital, urgent, inescapable. Every glance they offered, every sigh they exhaled, every slight shift in their mood seemed to define the contours of your worth. You lived within an invisible courtroom, forever on trial for crimes you did not commit, desperately arguing for your own value before a judge who had already decided you were never enough. Day after day, you bent yourself into smaller shapes, silencing your own voice, doubting your own instincts, pleading not for love, which should have been given freely, but for tolerance, for crumbs of acceptance, for a momentary reprieve from their cold withdrawal. At first, you told yourself it was love that compelled you to stay. You believed that if you could only be more patient, more forgiving, more understanding, the relationship would right itself and peace would return. You believed the problem lived within you, that your failure to satisfy, your inability to heal their unseen wounds, was the true source of the chaos. In truth, it was never about your inadequacy. It was about their appetite, an endless, devouring hunger for validation, adoration, and control, a hunger that no amount of sacrifice on your part could ever satisfy. They did not seek partnership, they sought possession. They did not love you as a soul, they clung to you as a mirror. Slowly and painfully, you began to awaken to this truth. It did not come as a thunderclap or a blazing revelation. It came as a weariness in your bones, as a whisper from the deepest places inside you that said, "This is not how love behaves." You started noticing the patterns, the praise that arrived only when you served their needs, the criticism that rained down when you dared assert your own, the constant reshaping of reality itself to keep you doubting your senses, questioning your memory, mistrusting your heart. It became clear that their approval was not a true gift, but a tool, a leash, a weapon. And so you began, falteringly at first, to loosen your grip on their opinion. You dared to imagine a life where you were not endlessly contorting yourself to meet their impossible demands. You dared to believe that your worth was not hanging precariously on their next smile or their next scowl. You dared to take your first trembling steps toward reclaiming yourself. At the beginning, the fear was overwhelming. You had lived so long under their gaze, navigating the minefields of their moods, that freedom itself felt disorienting, almost dangerous. But day by day, choice by choice, breath by breath, you grew stronger. You stopped chasing their praise like a thirsty soul chasing mirages across a desert. You stopped apologizing for your existence, your opinions, your needs. You stopped measuring your goodness by the temperature of their approval. In doing so, you reclaimed a sacred truth that had been stolen from you. Your value is not assigned by another's perception. It is inherent, immutable, woven into the fabric of your very being by the hands of the Creator Himself. This shift, subtle but seismic, terrifies the narcissist. They sense it even before they can name it. They see that the levers they once pulled, the guilt, the shame, the conditional affection, no longer yield the familiar results. Their power wanes. Their influence dissolves. You have ceased to be the marionette dancing to the twitch of your fingers. You have become sovereign, standing firm in the knowledge of your own worth. And so they fear you, not because you have become cruel, but because you have become unreachable. They can no longer manipulate what they can no longer define. They can no longer dominate what they can no longer diminish. You have risen beyond their reach, not by fighting them, but by refusing to need them. And that refusal, more than any blow you could strike, is the beginning of your true and irrevocable liberation. As you shed the burden of their approval, you begin to see, with clearer eyes and a steadier heart, another deeper reality. It is not merely their praise that has lost its hold on you, but their entire theater of manipulation that has grown hollow and powerless. And with that awakening, you step naturally into the second great sign of your freedom, the recognition that their games no longer move you. 2. Their games no longer move you. In the early days of your entanglement with the narcissist, every word they spoke and every silence they offered was a calculated move in a game you did not even realize you were playing. Their life was a theater of manipulation, and you were cast into the role of the ever-striving, ever-failing supplicant. One moment, they would lift you high with affection, only to let you crash the next with disdain. One day, they would whisper promises of undying loyalty. The next, they would punish you with icy distance for some imagined slight. You lived in a constant state of suspense, a never-ending performance where the rules changed without warning, and the prize, their love, their approval, their acceptance, was always just beyond reach. At the time, you believed, as all tender souls do, that if you simply loved enough, endured enough, forgave enough, you could steady the spinning wheel. You mistook their manipulations for misunderstandings, their betrayals for woundedness. You poured out your energy trying to solve puzzles that were designed to have no solution, and in doing so, you unknowingly fueled the machinery of their control. Every time you explained yourself to someone who was never listening, every time you forgave without repentance, every time you bent yourself further trying to fit into a mold they secretly despised, you gave life to the illusion they maintained, that they held the power. But freedom, once tasted, changes everything. When you awaken to the truth that their affection is a tool, that their cruelty is strategic, that their approval is counterfeit, you cease to dance to the music they play. Their tantrums, once devastating, become transparent performances. Their silent treatments, once agonizing, become mere silence. The sweet absence of poison rather than a wound. Their anger, once terrifying, now reveals itself as a desperate bluff, the roar of a paper tiger who depends entirely on your fear to maintain the illusion of threat. You begin to see it clearly. Their games were never about love, but about control. They needed you confused, because confusion breeds compliance. They needed you afraid, because fear shackles the soul. They needed you striving, because striving keeps you too busy to notice the chains tightening around your spirit. But once you see the pattern, once the machinery behind the curtain is exposed, the spell is broken. You stop participating, you stop justifying, you stop apologizing for sins you did not commit. You stop trying to fix what you did not break. And when you no longer react, when their rage meets your calm, when their manipulation meets your clarity, when their bait meets your silence, something extraordinary happens. You strip them of their power. For a narcissist's control is parasitic. It requires your participation to survive. Without your emotional energy to feed on, without your fear to manipulate, without your desperate longing to exploit, they are left grasping at shadows. They spiral, sometimes with rage, sometimes with pity plays, sometimes with renewed attempts at seduction, but none of it works. None of it touches you anymore. You realize, perhaps for the first time in your life, that you are not responsible for carrying their storms within your heart. You are not obligated to absorb their chaos, to soothe their wounds, to bear the weight of their unhealed past. You are free to let their emotions be theirs alone, crashing harmlessly against the walls of your well-guarded soul. You can stand, immovable and unmoved, while they thrash and wail and accuse, because you know, with an unshakable certainty, that their storms are not your burden to carry. And this, more than any outward confrontation, more than any dramatic severing of ties, is the true and lasting defeat of the narcissist. They have lost what they valued most, control over you. They cannot reach into your heart and twist your emotions anymore. They cannot pull your strings and watch you dance. They cannot define your reality, rewrite your history, or dictate your worth. Their empire of illusions has crumbled, and you have walked away from its ruins without even needing to look back. It is here, standing firm in the midst of their futile chaos, that you encounter the next, even deeper sign of your victory. Not merely the rejection of their games, but the full and glorious reclamation of your sovereign self. 3. You have reclaimed your sovereignty. There comes a sacred moment in the journey out of bondage when you realize that freedom is not merely the absence of chains, but the full reclamation of your rightful throne. For too long, under the dominion of the narcissist's manipulation, you abdicated that throne without knowing it. You surrendered your voice in favor of keeping the peace, your instincts in favor of pleasing another, your dreams in favor of mere survival. You made yourself small so that someone else could feel large. You dimmed your own light so that someone else's shadow would not seem so glaring in contrast. Every compromise, every silencing, every step away from your truest self was a quiet surrender of your sovereignty. Until one day, you found yourself a stranger within the walls of your own life. The narcissist thrives on this dethronement. They cannot bear partnership with equals. They crave dominion over subjects. To them, love is not mutual devotion, but ownership. They cannot truly love what they cannot control, and so they chip away at your independence piece by piece, until you, once a sovereign creation of infinite worth, became a vassal in their petty kingdom, living at the mercy of their tempers and desires. But there is something within the human spirit, something seated there by God Himself, that rebels against such tyranny. It is slow, like the thawing of frozen ground after a long winter, but it is sure. It begins with a quiet assertion, a whispered no where once there would have been silent compliance. It grows with each choice to speak your mind, to trust your own eyes, to listen to the still small voice inside you rather than the shouting demands of another. It strengthens with every moment you refuse to abandon yourself, even when the price of authenticity is the loss of their approval. Reclaiming your sovereignty is not a single act of defiance, it is 1,000 small acts of remembrance. It is the choice, repeated day after day, to trust that your thoughts matter, your feelings are valid, your dreams are worth pursuing, even when no one claps for you, even when someone sneers, even when walking away means walking alone for a time. It is the slow rebuilding of your own kingdom, a life not ruled by fear or the desperate need for external validation, but grounded in truth, in integrity, in the deep knowing of your own sacred worth. And make no mistake, to the narcissist, this reclamation is a greater threat than any angry confrontation could ever be. For a person who has returned to themselves cannot be conquered. A soul who has remembered their God-given freedom cannot be enslaved. You do not need to raise your voice or explain yourself. Your very existence as a free and sovereign being is a testimony that dismantles every lie they have tried to weave around you. They will feel it, they will sense, even if they cannot name it, that you have stepped outside their grasp forever. And in that realization they will flail, they will lash out, they will scramble to find another to fill the void you leave behind. But you, standing rooted in the firm ground of your own identity, will no longer be moved by their chaos. You will watch their desperate maneuvers with the calm eyes of one who knows, deeply and finally, that you were never theirs to possess. Sovereignty means you belong to yourself and to God alone. It means that no human voice has the final say over your worth. It means that love, when it comes into your life again, will find you whole, not begging for scraps, but offering the abundance of a healed and steadfast heart. And yet, as you stand in this heart-won freedom, you will see another truth begin to unfold, a truth that reveals the narcissist's frantic attempts to replace you with another, a sad, inevitable cycle you are now wise enough to witness without re-entry. And so, from this solid ground of sovereignty, you will step into the next great revelation. The crumbling desperation of the narcissist as they scramble for a substitute they can never truly find. Or they scramble to replace you and fail. It is almost inevitable. Once the narcissist realizes their dominion over you has collapsed, once they sense that the cord that once tethered you to their world has been severed by your newfound sovereignty, they will scramble with desperate hands to replace you. It is not love they seek to regain, though they may tell themselves otherwise. It is not companionship, nor shared dreams, nor true connection. No, what they seek and what they cannot live without is supply. The ceaseless validation, the admiration, the pliable soul who will once again revolve around the fragile planet of their ego. At first, their search seems frantic, almost feral. They cast their nets wide and shallow, eager for any new admirer who will nod when prompted, who will overlook the cracks in the facade, who will for a time believe the performance they so painstakingly curate. They flaunt these new connections, sometimes openly, sometimes subtly, photos splashed across social media, stories exaggerated and spun for the benefit of shared acquaintances, all designed not only to bolster their own image, but to wound you, to provoke jealousy, to lure you back into the familiar chaos you fought so hard to escape. In those early moments, if you are honest, it stings. It would be disingenuous to deny it. After all, you poured yourself into that relationship. You sacrificed, you endured, you believed. And now, in the aftermath of your departure, they seem to move on with alarming speed, as if you were merely a stepping stone to someone better, someone easier, someone more loyal. It feels for a fleeting second as if all your suffering has been made invisible, as if all your effort has been erased. But in the sanctuary of your newfound clarity, you begin to see beyond the surface. You realize that what they are building with their new supply is not a relationship, but a mirage. The same script is being reenacted only with new actors. The same hollow charm, the same insatiable demands, the same cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. Nothing has changed, because the narcissist has not changed. They cannot. For theirs is a wound so deep, so rooted in self-loathing and fear, that it blinds them to the very work necessary for real transformation. In time, you see it unfold like a tragic play whose ending you already know. The new supply, initially starry-eyed, begins to falter under the weight of impossible expectations. They too start to question, to doubt, to sense the cracks beneath the glossy exterior. And the narcissist, as always, will respond not with reflection, not with repentance, but with rage or retreat. The cycle will repeat because the narcissist is a prisoner of their own making, shackled by the very patterns they refuse to confront. And here lies a subtle but profound liberation for you. You realize that you were never the cause of their cruelty, nor the cure for it. Their dysfunction did not begin with you, and it will not end with you. Their desperate search for a replacement is not a reflection of your failure, but a testament to their emptiness. They are chasing ghosts, seeking in others what they have always lacked within themselves: wholeness, stability, a sense of genuine self-worth. And they will never find it, because no one can give them what they refuse to cultivate in their own heart. There is a temptation, fleeting but sharp, to warn the new supply, to intervene, to rescue. But wisdom teaches you that each soul must find their own way to the truth. Just as no one could have awakened you before you were ready, so too must others walk their own painful journeys at their own pace. Your role is not to return to the battlefield, but to continue walking in peace, knowing that you have escaped the cycle, that you have reclaimed your life from the endless repetition of their drama. Over time, you notice something even more striking. The narcissist world begins to shrink. New supplies become harder to secure. Patterns become visible. Reputations once carefully managed begin to fray. They become more isolated, more desperate, more transparent. The empire they built on illusions crumbles, stone by stone, not through any attack you launch, but through the quiet, relentless power of truth. And while they scramble, while they spiral deeper into the void of their own making, you continue to rise. You build a life rooted not in performance, but in authenticity, not in fear, but in freedom, not in striving, but in being. You discover new relationships, founded on mutual respect and genuine care. You learn, sometimes awkwardly, but always beautifully, how to trust yourself again, how to trust goodness again, how to trust God's gentle guidance over your wounded but healing heart. You realize, with a kind of bittersweet gratitude, that in leaving the narcissist's orbit, you not only reclaimed your sovereignty, you reclaimed your future. And it is in this sacred reclamation that the final, most beautiful sign of your victory takes root. A peace not won through battle, but through the simple, profound act of choosing truth over illusion, life over survival, wholeness over captivity. 5. You dwell in unshakable peace. There is a kind of peace that does not announce itself with trumpet blasts or flashing lights. It does not arrive draped in grandeur or accompanied by the accolades of others. No, the deepest peace, the kind that marks true victory over the narcissist and over every lesser tyranny, comes quietly, humbly, like the morning mist creeping into the valleys at dawn. It settles not on the surface of your life, but deep into the marrow of your bones, into the hidden places where fear once made its home. And once it takes root, it is immovable. This peace is not the fragile truce you once maintained under the narcissist's reign, that brittle, exhausted calm that came from walking on eggshells, from silencing your needs, from bending yourself into impossible shapes just to avoid setting off the next storm. That was not peace at all. That was survival dressed up as serenity. True peace, the peace you now know, does not demand your self-betrayal. It does not require your silence or your shrinking. True peace invites your full presence. Your voice, your heart, your laughter, your dreams, all of you, unashamed and unafraid. At first, the stillness feels foreign, even disorienting. You have lived so long in a battlefield that silence itself seems suspicious. You wait, tense and wary, for the next ambush, the next attack, the next wave of chaos. Your soul, conditioned by years of subtle and overt manipulation, flinches in the absence of conflict, as if peace is a trap you have not yet uncovered. But as the days pass, as you continue to choose freedom over fear, the stillness becomes familiar. It begins to feel like home. You start to notice the small graces, the way your breath comes easier in the mornings, the way your laughter bubbles up without calculation, the way your heart beats steadily without the constant background noise of dread. You realize you no longer live according to someone else's script, tiptoeing around landmines invisible to others. You no longer gauge your moods based on the shifting whims of a broken soul. You no longer ask permission to exist. There is a holy authority in that realization, a quiet but unshakable knowing that you are free, not because someone else has set you free, but because you have claimed your own freedom. You have declared with your life that you are no longer available for manipulation, no longer a willing participant in someone else's drama, no longer a vessel to be filled and emptied at another's whim. You belong to yourself. You belong to God. And remarkably, astonishingly, you no longer carry hatred in your heart for the one who once sought to crush your spirit. You see them now with a kind of detached compassion, not excusing their actions, not inviting them back into your sacred space, but recognizing that they are prisoners of their own making, architects of their own misery. Their downfall is not your triumph. Your triumph is this, that you no longer need them to suffer in order for you to be free. Their rage, their collapse, their endless cycles of dysfunction no longer define your story. You are free, whether they rise or fall. This peace becomes the bedrock upon which you rebuild your life. You discover relationships rooted in mutual respect, not exploitation. You find joy in solitude, contentment without performance, hope without fear. You begin to dream again, not dreams distorted by desperation or shaped by the need to prove your worth, but dreams born from the pure, quiet joy of being alive and being whole. You become a lighthouse, not striving to force your light upon others, but simply standing, shining, steady and sure, a beacon for those still lost in their own storms. Your very presence testifies that healing is possible, that peace is real, that freedom is worth fighting for. And it is in this peace, not in revenge, not in bitterness, not in the crumbling of the narcissist's false empire, that your ultimate victory is sealed, because they cannot touch you anymore. They cannot reach into the sanctuary you have built within yourself. They cannot manipulate what they can no longer access. They cannot diminish what they can no longer define. You are free, and that freedom is not fragile. It does not depend on the narcissist's downfall. It does not hinge on their recognition of your worth. It stands independently, gloriously, because it was never theirs to give or take away. In the end, this unshakable peace is the final and greatest sign that you have utterly defeated the narcissist, not by becoming like them, not by winning their game, but by refusing to play it at all. You have chosen truth over illusion, courage over fear, sovereignty over captivity. You have walked out of the shadows and into the marvelous light of your own hard-won freedom. And now, no matter what storms they unleash, no matter what rumors they spread, no matter how desperately they scramble for new sources of supply, they can no longer harm you, for you have become untouchable, inviolable, whole. You belong to yourself. You belong to truth. You belong to God. And that eternal, unshakable belonging is the victory they will never understand and can never undo. True freedom is not marked by the downfall of the narcissist, but by the quiet, powerful awakening of your own soul. You did not win because they suffered. You won because you chose to step away from the shadows of manipulation and live in the light of truth. You did not heal by watching them collapse. You healed by refusing to collapse yourself. There is no greater triumph than reclaiming your voice, your dignity, your right to exist without permission or fear. Their world may crumble in endless cycles of illusion and despair, but you no longer stand within it. You have built something far stronger, a life anchored in peace, rooted in reality, nourished by self-respect and grace. You carry scars, yes, but they are not marks of defeat. They are proof of battles fought and victories won, deep within the unseen places of the heart. You walk lighter now, unburdened by the need for their approval, untouched by their chaos. You belong wholly to yourself and to the God who called you to freedom long before the first chain was ever forged. Their fear of you is the fear of truth they cannot control, of a light they cannot extinguish, of a soul they can no longer bend to their will. And that light, your light, will only grow brighter from here. The journey was never about destroying them. It was always about finding yourself. And now, at last, you have.